Yesterday it was a dozen aliases. Now they're reporting 17 aliases plus. Did you ever see this coming in our country? Did you ever think we'd be at a time where prisons are set up, they're going to be run by foreign mercenaries, and they're going to be training foreign troops? It's nightmarish.
And foreigners arresting Americans in America. And also the part of it that really scares me is the outsourcing of the job of spying on Americans. That's now being handled by private companies. I did an article about this recently. Science Applications and SAIC, they are composed of veterans of intelligence, but they're a private corporation with a contract to various departments of the U.S. government. And they've been assigned the job of correlating the job of spying on Americans. So there are these special stations set up all over America where members of Army counterintelligence sit in the same office with members of SAIC, private people spying on us. I went all through the Vietnam War, and I knew my phone was tapped, and I knew that my mail was, odd things happened to my mail. And it didn't particularly bother me because I like this country. I'm not even an American. I'm a Canadian, but I like America. And I sort of wanted them to know what I was doing because I was not planning to put bombs anywhere, and I would prefer that they knew that. But I'm very uncomfortable that the job of watching me is now being handed out to private corporations because they really have, they have a profit motive. One of the things that went wrong in Iraq, this same company, SAIC, was given the job of finding out whether there were weapons of mass destruction in Iraq or not. And it was big business for them to report, yes, there is, because that meant more contracts and more money. And, of course, this was one of the biggest intelligence fiascos of the last, 50 years probably, because we waged a whole war on the pretext of the weapons of mass destruction, which absolutely weren't there when they went to look for them. So the Bush administration set up a committee to find out what went wrong, and they put all the SAIC people on the committee. So obviously they were unable to find, or they failed to report that SAIC had been a big part of the problem. That's what's wrong with privatizing intelligence, because a profit motive is going to skew the intelligence. And the same thing with privatizing security. I don't know who was really responsible for stirring up trouble in Pittsburgh. I mean, time after time after time, you have peaceful protests, which are then broken up in a violent way by the people whose nominal job is to prevent violence, but they have a stake as private corporations in prolonging the violence that they're supposed to be stopping.
Well, we're talking about even the LRAD weapons that they used at this thing, the long-range acoustical devices. We find out today, the Washington Times, DHS helps local police nationwide buy military-style sonic devices. This is huge business for the military-industrial complex that Eisenhower warned us about on his exit from the presidency. This is them really coming into fruition. And you talked about private security firms spying on the American people. We know through the lawsuit Hepting versus AT&T that AT&T and other companies had secret rooms where they split off all the information. Everything that went through a data cable, everything that went through your cell phone was then hardlined into a database. Now, I'm not saying that that's all tracked through human eyes, but it is sent through systems like Carnivore and Promise, and they look for key words, key phrases. In essence, they're spying on the American people 24/7.
And I wonder if anyone has really thought through the consequences. What happened in Pittsburgh is really very, very disturbing, because it's like serving notice to the American people that the age of peaceful protest is over. If you go to a peaceful demonstration, you risk losing your hearing from this LRAD, which is a monster. I mean, in 1984, Orwell didn't have the imagination to foresee some of the things that we now have in place here. And, I have very mainstream friends who are people who never protested in their lives, but are extremely upset that this kind of, as you say, it's big business. And if people can't protest peacefully, well, I don't want to advise them what to do but I would personally prefer that people protested peacefully.
Absolutely.
Than be driven to other forms of protest, because peaceful protest is now past history in this country.
Yeah, and I went down. I actually covered on the ground the Pittsburgh G20. I was there. They locked down all of downtown Pittsburgh. It was absolutely impossible to get there. They had Humvees with military forces. The National Guard came in. It was a $19 million project. I had covered every single one of the quote-unquote protests or out-of-control riots, and I had not seen the force that they used, just the amount of force ever, what they used on Friday night after the G20. It was less than, I don't know if you've seen the videos yet, but there were less than 200 peaceful protesters in Schenley Plaza.
Right.
Okay.
I have seen some of them.
Yeah.
All the ones I've seen, the camera ends up sort of going crazy and photographing this.
Because you're running
over their lives.
Yeah. I don't want to.
Yeah.
You don't want a rubber bullet in the eye. You lose your hearing. People are getting hit with tear gas canisters and LRAD weapons. And I was threatened with arrest several times. I was grabbed by one of the riot police. I'm the only person there. Literally, the protesters are a couple hundred feet away from me, and all I'm doing is filming the line of military police that are out there, and it's just unbelievable. You can't be here. I get charged by one. I get grabbed by another. They reach for the plastic cuffs. And then Rob Dew, who you've been talking with all morning, he was actually detained. Now they
showed them the press pass, and they said no, and detained him anyway.
And when we were calling to try to get these guys out, they said, no, there's a different process for protesters. Now, this is the first time in this country that they detained over 100 peaceful protesters, took their digital fingerprints, and didn't charge them with anything. It used to be in this country, you had to be charged with a crime, they would take your fingerprints, but if you were found innocent of that crime, you got that information back. These people weren't charged with anything.
Right.
It's unbelievable. They're obviously databasing the dissidents, to try to quelch us from using our free speech. Like you said,
it's a deterrent thing. They want to say to people, you go out and be part of a peaceful protest, and you don't know what's going to happen to you, so stay away. And that's and I just don't see any opposition to it. And I didn't see, the mainstream media are writing themselves into the history books by their refusal to face these big new issues that are coming up in this country.
Absolutely. And you've been one who was very critical of the Bush administration. You've gone beyond the left and right paradigm. You know that this is, one control group, one establishment. So you've been pretty critical of the Obama administration as well. I want to get into how they really advanced the program, how they've advanced continuity of government, how they've advanced, presidential privileges, and how, this is, and these are executive orders. This is not a government for and by the people anymore. We really don't have the system of checks and balances that this country was found on. That's why we have the three different branches of government. And that's why, Congress is supposed to have oversight. We don't see that anymore in this country. Right.